俺らにできるのは立ち止まって泣くか。くそくそくそ。一歩でも前に進むかの二つだけだ。今日の主役はこの俺や。夢で来るか。
Everyone who's anyone needs a good origin story. Sequels exist to carry on tradition and to offer us what couldn't be experienced due to the limitations of the past. But what if the past was where it all was at? Prequels give us the chance to recontextualize the situation, potentially leading to a reinvention of the characters and their themes that can even serve to establish the peak versions of those bona fide legends. Then you even have the more ambitious sequel prequel, which tries to complete the narrative while showing contrast of what once was and what could have been before their protagonist gets ahead of themselves. Yakuza 0 is not only a fascinating prequel, fleshing out the catalyst for two of gaming's most likable characters, but it's also the source of the series' greatest point of evolution, both technically and tonally, giving us the most dynamic version of the Mad Dog of Shimano, and one of the darkest sides of the Dragon of Dojima. I've written enough about how stylistic the Yakuza are, how they take influence from traditional mafia types seen in American media, and curiously cross-pollinate those traits with anime tropes like the Super Saiyan warrior, power scaling accompanied by moralizing monologues, morphing into an inexplicable circus that is equal parts parable and pleasure seeker. Even though it goes without saying how self-explanatory the appeal of RGG's gangsters is, these Yakuza went back to the 80s to remind us of one of the most reliable sources of entertainment in video games. If you'd never seen crime drama before, you'd swear these guys were the true OGs. The Yakuza formula is a balancing act between melodrama and burlesque. One moment, you're deeply engrossed in a volatile soap opera with a family being split at the helm. And the next, you're taking it down to Pound Town with the biggest troll face possible. Yakuza 0 asks, is there a crowd for that? And the answer is a resounding yes. The widespread popularity of the series was for a long time mostly confined to its native Japan. But now that the dragon is set free in the West, where GTA had reigned supreme as the trademark open-world crime series, Like a Dragon Can Shine. Yakuza 0 is a masterclass in game design, through and through, because of how it offers you a stimulating story to uncover in evenly entertaining parts, with a plethora of interesting and diverse ventures to partake in at your own pace. The side content feels less like forced pop-ups being advertised and more like lively, organic happenings of a world that never sleeps. How else could you go from a heartfelt lecture from the patriarchy to kinky wrestling escapades for million-yen bets unless you were truly inhabiting a video game world? Seeking out the so-called side content feels completely natural and inviting, rather than a cleanup chore that most games would have you do for arbitrary completion. Yakuza totally has its share of annoying completion checklist items, designed by some obnoxious overlord. Believe me, I know, because this is my third Yakuza Platinum, which took me 200 hours this time. But at least to that end, they're determined not to repeat themselves, to simply copy and paste for lack of trying. These developers are passionate about not only telling you a story, but creating a world that you will want to play in all day long. Consider the Majima minigame where you have to interview girls for the job at the prestigious nightclub. and compete in a chill diner dash simulator, with a built-in narrative to boot consisting of dozens of unique dialogue options and many script pages dedicated just to this optional activity, or the 100 sub-stories that can range from quirky encounters in the style of skits to heartwarming, cautionary tales showing character development by illuminating the different sides of a rough exterior. It's the rare breed of entertainment that can provide the same level of intrigue in the first 30 hours as it does 150 hours in. It used to be that video games were playable, but with some cinematics to bridge the gaps in storytelling. Now we have cinematics with some gameplay if we're lucky. Yakuza strikes a fine balance of being both an open-ended adventure and a gripping bit of theater. It's in the simplicity and authenticity that Yakuza 0 shits on so-called prestige titles by embracing the absurd, that which can only exist in a video game, that which used to be a novel experience but is now entirely absent from most products you'll find on the shelf. Like a Dragon is a brand that could only be a video game, and one that makes video games more credible for that reason. Yes, there are long stretches of formality when you're simply scrolling through dialogue or watching short movie clips, but this is all to give a breather in pacing and to frame the narrative in such a way that will keep the audience engaged in the uniqueness of RPG mechanics. When you get to play, however, there is so much variety that you almost feel as though the very game genre itself is switching on the fly. Whereas other games try to capitalize on banal formula, Yakuza, like Resident Evil, throws shit at the wall to see what will stick. And I guess those walls are made out of glue because almost everything finds a way to feel wholesome. These games market themselves at this point, because putting it all together feels less stereotypical than the original gangsters have become, and more interesting than what the comparative video game counterparts have failed to do likewise, actually entertain us. Yakuza games have rich storytelling anchored by distinct characters, heroes, villains, patriarchs, and everything in between. Protagonists like Yagami and Ichiban have an infectious silly side as well as a commanding stern side to let us know they're still serious. Judgment Kazi Kiryu is stiff and stoic, seeking to live up to his father's wishes, only to find that path to be the very road that leads men to crumble. And ultimately, Kiryu finds the courage to carve his own path out from the rubble. To be a Yakuza, he's gonna have to earn it.
小僧がとうとう化けやがった本物の極道に
But Kiryu isn't even the most compelling character in his own series or in the game. It's Majima, who is teeming beneath the surface with an insatiable bloodlust, waiting for the excuse to finally release his inner psychosis built up over years of torture and belittlement. And also because the series just needed a personality foil to Kiryu, whose stiff portrayal sometimes works well in bringing comedy to scenes that require a good straight man, and other times makes him a bit too rigid, but at least he's a cutie. Yakuza 0 sold me on its premise with one scene in particular, a scene that must be considered one of the greatest video game moments, and simply one of the greatest character introductions ever. The Lord of the Night, coming to the rescue. A Yakuza is nothing without his image. For a made man, Majima is a creation all his own. To see the mad dog of Shimano pretend as the world's clown is painful, shocking knowing what we know he will become and who he is already deep inside. The way this sequence unfolds is completely masterful, hinging on irony and suspense for longtime fans that know how unimaginable Goro-Chan-san's restraint here is, and for those that have no idea who Majima is, they will be fully intrigued in seeing what's in store for Osaka's best cabaret manager. Majima's characterization here echoes Dante's Awakening, to the extent that it's a textbook origin story sensibility to get us as invested in the contrast of a character before they really were, as we are when they complete the metamorphosis. What makes Majima more compelling than Kiryu, as well as the true star of Yakuza 0, is the full spectrum of his development, showing the literal torture he endures, His discipline and dedication, not only to his false identity and the part-time role he plays, but to the people who depend on him, his mentorship to the full-time girls at his club, the soft side that even an eye patch can't conceal, going from murderous intent to sworn protector, the guide dog for the blind girl and her avenger, we get a complete and convincing tale of how the Mad Dog unleashed. What is it with men named Goro going insane? The theme at the heart of Yakuza 0 is individuality, juxtaposed against the main gameplay element, which is money. It's one of the most satisfying gameplay features out there, to stylishly beat up on the bad guys, knocking loose change out of them like piñatas with almost every hit. Mr. Shakedown is a nice touch through the open world, an element of high risk and high reward that you can encounter on the streets. The real estate and nightclub minigames were the blueprints for Ichiban Holdings, and likewise are excellent pieces of bonus content, which self-contained are more labors of love than most AAA games with budgets bigger than ambition. The endless flow of cash is emblematic of Japan's economic bubble, and the excess of organized crime itself. You give your blood oath to a family for the goal of making money and amassing privilege, but the cause is really impersonal. The alliance is tentative and the power fleeting because roles can be reversed in the blink of an eye. For a series about mafiosos, it seems like most of the Yakuza games feature pro-tags that exist outside of the system, with Kiryu leaving on and off, Yagami being a civilian, and Ichiban being expelled. Majima is a loyal dog, an old soldier that sticks around not because of fealty to the family, but because he's destined to bring the ruckus. Yakuza 0 features many of the series' best antagonists and supporting cast, with Nishikiyama, Nishitani, and Tachibana serving as guiding influences to the protagonists, and some great villains like Sagawa, the Big Three, and the man with the bat tattoo. The main story is only about 30 hours long, but it flies through with mostly great pacing and structure, depending on the order you choose to tackle the 100 plus hours of completionist material. Normally I'd have a problem with that ratio, but because Yakuza is more of a world to inhabit than a hand-holding tour exhibit than most games have become, I think it's just the right balance for the casual and the hardcore player. I believe games can inspire people. It's better to have an ambition bigger than a budget than it is to have a budget bigger than ambition, because the most important thing is passion. If video games are fakes, I'm here to say some fakes can shine brighter than the real, because when we fail to be our true selves, we have characters to help us see who we really are. These characters, dressed to the nines, from zeros to heroes, keep giving us the dreams we've never seen, because a little studio named RGG knows that the customer is king.
お客様は神様ですから。ほう。おかげさまで夢が叶いました。素直に I love you 届けようきっと You love me 伝わるさ君に合うガラスの靴を探そう。
出てくるからですよ彼が。
本物のダンス見せてやるぜ。
ありがとうございます。皆様の寛大なお心遣いありがたく頂戴いたします。
See you next time.